Hi, CP Pre-Calc, section 1.2, quick review from Algebra 1, linear equations. We'll start out with the slope-intercept form of an equation of a line. If it is linear, almost always can we write it in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. The slope is m, the y-intercept is the ordered pair 0b. One exception would be the vertical line. Vertical line cannot be written as y equals mx plus b. Vertical line instead is in the form of x equals a. And the reason why is because vertical line does not have a slope. The slope is called undefined. So since we do not have a slope, we can't write it in the slope-intercept form. All right, so we're going to sketch the graph of each linear equation. So these will be lines when we are finished sketching them. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in since it's kind of tiny. All right, first one is y equals 1/2 x plus 1. We've got our slope at 1/2 and our y-intercept, the ordered pair 0, 1. We always begin with the b, so we're going to begin at that y-intercept, that ordered pair 0, 1. And then from there, we're going to use our slope to move up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, until we have enough points to form a line. Just in case you have trouble going one direction, you can also go the other direction. You just take 1 over 2 and you switch it to negative. So negative 1 over negative 2. If I take two negatives and I divide both negatives, I still get a positive. So if I go down 1, left 2, down 1, left 2, down 1, left 2, I will still be on that same line. We have the same steepness throughout the whole line. So under shapes, you can find lines. And, change it to pink. You can go ahead and connect your points with a line with arrows. That means it goes on forever and ever. All right, question B. We've got y equals 2. So y equals 2 is in the y equals mx plus b form. Let's see, make this one blue. Y equals 0x plus 2. So that tells me that my slope is 0. And my y-intercept is 0, 2. So we begin at 0, 2, and 0 can also be written as 0 over any number. You can pick up a number if you want, 0 over 1. That means I go up nothing, but I go over 1. Go up nothing, I go over 1, and so on. So what we're making here is a horizontal line. So we'll go ahead and draw that line in. You will see that this line does not pass through the x-axis. It does pass through the y-axis at 2 at the y-intercept, but it does not pass through the x-axis. And when you look at the equation, there isn't an x in the equation. So if we have 0x, then we have 0x intercept down here. All right, and then the third one, x plus y equals 3. So I gave you a really easy one, but they will end up being more complicated in this class. I would use x and y intercepts. To graph this. However, we can just easily also change it into slope-intercept form. So normally I would use x and y intercepts. We're not going to do that quite yet. I'll just change it into y equals negative x plus 3. Then I can find my slope. My slope is the number that the coefficient for x, so that's going to be negative 1. And my y-intercept is 0, 3. So I'm going to begin at 3. And negative 1 as a fraction would be over 1. So I'm going to go down 1 and then right 1. Down 1, right 1, down 1, right 1. Now, people make silly mistakes, especially after being off out of school for quite a while for the summer. So remember, if we have one negative in the entire fraction, then the slope is negative, meaning the slope goes down from left to right the way you read. You can also rewrite that fraction as 1 over negative 1, which would mean up 1 left, up 1 left, up 1 left, and so on. Then you go ahead and take your line and connect your dots. Connect those points. Okay, and the last question, x equals negative 4. Well, this is that special case where we do not have a y, so we cannot write it in y equals mx plus b. So we just have to know that this is a vertical line. This is going to tell us that every single x coordinate is negative 4. So the x-intercept would be negative 4, and every single other x coordinate, if I made a chart, would be negative 4, no matter what y was. And then when we look at that, it would make a, I said negative 5, it would make a vertical line. Okay. All right, our next section is finding the slope. And here's the formula for finding the slope. Again, Algebra 1 review. Hopefully this is pretty easy for you to go through. We subtract the two y coordinates over subtracting the x coordinates in the form of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And this cannot work if the x's are the same. If the x's are the same, oops. If the x's are the same, then this would be undefined slope. So find the slope. We're just going to do our second slope, or I'm sorry, our second y minus our first y over our second x minus our first x. Oops. And when we have minus a negative, change it into plus positive. We've got 1/5. So our slope is 1/5. For b, we've got 2 minus 2 over 2 minus negative 1, 0 over 3. When we take any number, we take 0 and divide it by any number, that is possible. That is the answer of 0. This equation here would be where y was always 2. That would be a horizontal line. Question C. Oops, I'm going to change the color. M equals, and we've got negative 1 minus 4 over 1 minus 0. Negative 5 over 1, so negative 5 would be our slope for that one. We always reduce, we always simplify our slopes. And D, 1 minus 4 over 3 minus 3. Well, right up here it says if the x's are the same, then the slope is undefined. We'll show you another way of realizing that. If you go ahead and do your math, you get negative 3 over 0. Well, anytime we have a number over 0, this right here says no, because we can't do it. Number over 0 is no. So our slope for this one is just undefined. All right, now, no matter what you have done in the past, you are going to be using point slope form in this section. If you remember how to do other things from the past, that's great. But in the pre-calc curriculum, you are to be learning how to use point slope form. So that's what you're going to be assessed on, that you know how to use point slope form. Zoom out a little bit. Here we go. All right. This is the equation that we use if we have a slope of m and it's passing through the point x1, y1. We plug in m here. We plug in our x1 and our y1 here. We use subtraction. The other x and the other y that I will go ahead and highlight, this y and that x, nothing gets plugged in there. They stay as x and y. So we have an equation. So we have variables. So write the equation of the line that has a slope of 3 and passes through the point 1, negative 2. The directions, very important. The point slope form is most useful for finding the equation of the line. You should remember this. Write the equation of the line that has a slope of 3 and passes through the point 1, negative 2. So we are going to start with our point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. You do not have to write the formula every time, but I highly recommend it until you have it memorized. If you write it every time, you're going to memorize it faster. Now we're going to plug in the information that we were given. So we have y minus, and then the point says negative 2. So put negative 2. Equals our slope of 3 times x minus 1. And I'm going to simplify. Y plus 2 equals 3 times x minus 1. This is point slope form. If the directions ask you to put it in a different form, for example, maybe slope-intercept form, oops, then we will distribute the 3 and then subtract the 2 from both sides, and then it would be in slope-intercept form. But you really just need to read the directions. I hate when you miss, points just for something silly like that. Okay, next one, example 4. Write the equation of the line that passes through the ordered pairs, and this time I'm giving you 2 ordered pairs, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, 5. But what we need is a point and the slope. Here, I've given you 2 points but no slope. So you can find the slope by using the slope formula from the first page of notes. So we'll do 5 minus, I can't see if that's a 5 or a negative 5, one moment. Oops, sorry. Oh, just positive 5, okay. Okay, 5 minus negative 2 over negative 3 minus negative 1. We'll simplify that and we get 7 over negative 2, so negative 7 halves. All right, so now we have the slope. We're going to do point slope form. So if you don't have it memorized, write it out. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Plug in the information that's given to you. Y minus. Now, we have to use y1. I honestly do not care if you use y1 or y2 in this scenario. You could use either of them. whatever ordered pair you want. Just make sure you use the corresponding x with it. You'll get the same answer no matter what. So I'm going to go ahead and use y1. We go y minus negative 2 equals, our slope is negative 7 over 2 times x minus negative 1. And I'm going to go ahead and simplify, rewrite the answer in point slope form. And that would be point slope form. You could also use the other ordered pair. I'll go ahead and put that in a different color. If you use negative 3, 5, you would have y minus negative, oops, just kidding. You would have y minus 5, yeah, y minus 5 equals our slope, negative 7 halves times x minus negative 3. And then just simplify y minus 5 equals negative 7 halves x plus 3. So either of these are correct answers for this question here. And again, read what form the answer should be in. The next section, standard form of a linear equation. So I know in Algebra 1 and 2 you probably did not do a lot of standard form, but we are going to use standard form a little bit more in here. Standard form is in the form of ax plus by equals c, your standard form. And there are some rules that for some reason people forget. So let's try really good to remember these rules. A has to be positive. It has to start with a positive number. A, B, and C are integers. Absolutely no fractions, no decimals. A, B, and C are integers. And then this is a little extra piece of information that we will use later to have some time-saving tricks. If you want the slope when it is in standard form, you do negative a over b. And we'll come back to that later. Today we're just going to write things in standard form. So it says rewrite the equation from example 3 in standard form. So we go back up to example 3 and we got y plus 2 equals 3 parentheses x minus 1. We have to rewrite it in standard form. So I am going to go ahead and distribute. And now we have to get in the form so that the x's come first. Ax, I'm going to write it right here, ax plus by equals c. So we need the x's, then the y's, then the equal sign, then the c. So I could, well, there's many different ways that I could do this. This is what most people will do first. And then from there, we would subtract 3, and we would get negative 3x plus y equals negative 6. Then you need to go check. Up here it says a has to be a positive number, where a is a positive number. A has to be a positive number, and when I'm looking at x plus by equals c, I have a negative number for a. So I'm just going to manipulate this equation because I know all these fun rules from previous math courses. I know that if I multiply or divide both sides by the same number, it doesn't change the value of the equation. It just changes the appearance. So now I have 3x minus y equals positive 6. So this is the answer in standard form. I just manipulated it by using properties of equality. And then our next example is same kind of thing, but we're going to take example 4. So I'm going to go back and find example 4. That was a fun one we had, and it doesn't really matter which one that you choose. I'll go ahead and use the first one. Y plus 2 equals negative 7 halves x plus 1. So I will distribute first. Okay, now here's where if you know these rules, you can save yourself some time in the long run. I know that I cannot have fractions. I cannot have fractions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to manipulate this equation with the multiplication property of equality, and I'm going to multiply both sides by the number 2. That is the number 2, which is also over 1. If you're multiplying fractions, you have to multiply straight across. So I'm multiplying both sides by 2. That will give me 2y plus 4 equals, and when I multiply 2 times negative 7, which is divided by 2, these 2's will cancel. I'll get negative 7x. Plus, I multiply here, and I'm going to get negative 7. So now I've gotten rid of the fractions. Next thing I'm going to do is add 7x to both sides. I also am going to take away 4 from both sides. Just going to do that in the same step. And I will have 7x plus 2y equals negative 11. I have a positive first number, and I don't have any fractions or decimals. Where some people make mistakes, and you can totally do this, but people make mistakes here, is you can actually use your multiplication in the first step. Noticing there's that fraction there, you could use it here. I'll show you what it would look like, but people kind of make silly mistakes on that and get the distributing wrong after that. So that's why I tell you to multiply it out first. Okay, so if we're going to multiply both sides by 2, then I would get 2y plus 4 on this side. But on this side, you have to be very careful, because here we're multiplying 3 things. Well, in math, you cannot multiply 3 things together. You can only multiply 2 at a time. So I would multiply the 2 by the negative 7/2 first and get negative 7. But we have not multiplied x plus 1. Then our second, we would multiply the negative 7. We would distribute that through, and we get 2y plus 4 equals negative 7x minus 7. And from there, we would do the exact same step that we did right here and have the exact same answer. You just got to be careful. We can only multiply two things at a time. All right, and then the last part of your first assignment is parallel and perpendicular lines. And this is a review from a long time ago, including geometry. We know that 2 lines are parallel if they have the same slope. And then 2 non-vertical lines are parallel if their slopes are negative reciprocals or opposite reciprocals of each other. So an opposite reciprocal, opposite means plus or minus, and then reciprocal, the reciprocal would be to flip your fraction. So I would have b over a instead. So example 5, find the slope-intercept forms of the equations of the lines that pass through point 2, negative 1, and are parallel and perpendicular to the line 2x minus 3y equals 5. So the only time we need this line right here is for the first step. We do not need it after the first step. What you need from this line is you need to find the slope. Find the slope of that line. Once we find the slope of that line, we will not use it anymore. So I look at the form of this line, and it is not in y equals mx plus b. So I cannot just find the m right away. So your choices are to convert it, or there was a tiny little hint back here that said when in standard form, we can find the slope by doing negative a over b. So I'm going to use that shortcut because that's way faster than trying to convert the equation to something else. So I'm going to find my slope by doing negative a over b. And to remember that it is negative a over b, I write it every time. I write negative a over b so I can help remember. So our slope is going to be negative 2 over b is negative 3. And we will reduce that to 2/3. That's the slope. Now, for parallel, we will start with the same slope. So I start with my slope. And then we need a point. And we look over here, and in the directions they gave us, a point to negative 1. It says we're going to find the equation, so I will use point slope form. Again, I write it every single time until I have it memorized. All right, let's plug some stuff in. Y minus negative 1 equals our slope of 2/3 times x minus 2. So y plus 1 equals 2/3 x minus 2. Now I go and I check my directions because sometimes I skim through those. Find the slope find the slope-intercept form. Oh, that is the form it needs to be in. So now I'm going to go back, and I just have a little bit more work to do because I have to change this. I have to change this into, oh, what am I doing here? I have to change this into slope-intercept form. All right, so we're going to distribute 2/3. Y plus 1 equals 2/3 x minus 2. Oh, shoot. Distribute 2/3. Y plus 1 equals 2/3 x minus. Now remember, when you multiply fractions, you put 2 over 1, you multiply straight across, 4/3. From here, we need to add or subtract 1 from both sides. But here I've got a fraction. I've got negative 4/3 minus 1. You have to have like terms to subtract, so you have to have common denominators. So instead of subtracting 1, I'm going to subtract 3/3, which is the same thing as subtracting 1. So I'll have y equals 2/3 x minus, so I've got minus 4/3 minus 3/3 equals minus 7/3. So that is the answer for the parallel line. Part B says, now let's do perpendicular. So the order of what I just did right here is exactly the same. The only difference between parallel and perpendicular is the slope, because perpendicular have opposite reciprocal and parallel uses the same slope. So if I know that my slope is 2/3, I need my perpendicular slope. And from geometry, this upside down T means perpendicular, so I do not have to write the whole word out. Perpendicular slope is going to be opposite and reciprocal. So 2/3 is positive, this one needs to be negative. 2 over 3 becomes 3 over 2. So there's my slope. I also need a point. We are going to use the exact same point to negative 1 from the previous question. I mean, it's like part A and part B, so we're using the same point. Now we do point slope form. y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So I've got y minus negative 1 equals my new slope, negative 3/2, x minus 2. So this is all the same as the previous example with the exception of the slope. Okay, so now need to distribute because we need to put it in slope-intercept form. You want to distribute a negative times a negative, it becomes a positive. When I multiply 3 over 2 times 2 over 1, the 2's cancel, or they become 6 over 2, which is 3. And I will subtract 1, and I will get y equals negative 3/2 x plus 2.